Thank you. Yes, it's pronounced the Unbelievable Machine Company. It's important that you give it the right inflection. Whoops. Yes, so I'm Felix. I was not supposed to be here, but I got on my bike in the morning and just rode a few minutes upriver. It's beautiful. The place is so nice, made the work from home experience a lot more palatable. I actually worked pretty much every day since this whole shit started from home. And you would think a person like that probably has their head in all kinds of clouds. But no, I actually still run things in a good old data center. What do you know? So, yeah. Data centers, right? And Ansible, Puppet, I'm stoked. There's more people here than I had imagined for Ansible and Puppet, and I don't know. There's probably people out there, maybe even in here, who might be thinking, what year is this? Puppet, Ansible, why are we talking about this? But yeah, the thing is, while it may feel like if you are at these events that everything is now in containers and clouds and what have you, some people will have to run these data centers. And in the data center space, tools for config management and deployment and stuff, they are just as much a reality now as the kernel. Or that's how I feel about it. So this is a talk I did actually at this stage, like 5 years ago. It's a little dated, I guess. And at the time, I would start it by reading a text. It's this text. And actually, it's too fun not to read it, so let's do it again. What the hell? The pig go. Go is the fountain. The pig put foot. Grunt. Foot in what? Ketchup. The dove fly. Fly is in the sky. The dove drop something. The something on the pig. The pig disgusting. The pig rattle. Rattle with dove. The dove angry. The pig leave. The dove produce. Produce is chicken wing. With wing bark. No quack. And then I would ask the audience to think, who could the author be? And spoiler, there was some anonymous AI that apparently created this text. And then I would tell this whole story of how someone had a data processing issue and they thought, hey, let's solve it with machine learning. And well, now it's 2022, and we all know that solving any real-life issue with machine learning is just a very bad idea. Hey Siri, would you agree? Okay, you win. But yeah, so the story went on. Yeah, they tried it with the neural network and it failed horribly, so they switched to an actual solution, but then they still had the cluster with the neural network running and they made it write poetry, and that's what it did. Now, today I would much rather claim that this neural network became Dolly Mini. So yeah, horrible, horrible things that happen. And the whole point of this is that I would suggest anyone to try and use the right tool for the right job, right? Because when all you have is a neural network, then you may have to look at very disturbing images of Elon, who knows? So don't. So yeah, let's talk about Ansible and Puppet instead. I'm sorry about these images, I won't show them again. So that's the tools, right? And 2022. Do I really have to explain why we want config management? But yes, we don't type into shells a lot anymore if we can avoid it, right? We don't have these wikis that explain to us how to install our things. We can repeat everything. We do all these software engineering-y types of things. It's good. We like it. So just to rehash, I don't know, some people may not be much into Puppet, others not so much into Ansible. So imagine we build a web server with Puppet. It has a couple components like a varnish cache, the Apache server, of course, a Java VM. And so with Puppet, you have so-called classes that will model these things, and they consist of resources. And resources will be things like a file. This is how this config file should look, or this package needs to be installed, or hey, maybe this other package cannot be installed because it will conflict, things like that. And with Puppet, you define dependencies between these resources so that Puppet knows, okay, I cannot manage this file because before the package is installed, etc. And Puppet ends up with this graph of resources. And when you run this, when you make Puppet do the things it needs to do to build your web server, then Puppet finds a way to put these resources in order as long as all of this respects the dependencies that you have defined. With Ansible, it's similar-ish, but it looks a little different. So you will create so-called roles for the same things, likely. And these consist of tasks. And they are very similar to Puppet's resources. They are idempotent, so Ansible will only do work if it needs to do work. And other than that, it just runs them from top to bottom. It's a scripting-like approach. It's very powerful, very easy to wrap your head around. There can be some requirement relationships between these roles for your components, but yeah, everything is very lightweight, very nice. Okay, how does it work with Puppet? You will have agents everywhere. Like all your machines will need this Puppet agent to do your work, and it talks to the central instance called the master. Usually, it's not strictly required, but that's the canonical setup, right? The agents have this little external tool called Factor. It gives to the master lots of information about each single machine, so that your infrastructure code called the manifest that the master has can rely on these local information from all the machines. It can also rely on configuration data that you put in this store called Hyra, and on the side everything will be stored in this database called the PuppetDB. Right. As for Ansible, there's no agents. You don't pre-install anything. Like, all you need is one machine with Ansible, and then the software, the agent software, will be deployed every single time. Every time you run, Ansible builds its SSH connections and does whatever is necessary. Apart from that, it feels kind of similar. You have the code on your central Ansible machine in so-called playbooks, and you will create inventories of different parts of your infrastructure that defines the hosts that live there, and also configuration data in variables. We'll see some of that later. For those who are not super into both of these and maybe thinking of adding one to the other, there's some cool pitfalls in what things are and what they call them. So as said, in Puppet, you have these resources like files, package, etc. So file is a resource type to Puppet, and package is also a resource type. Ansible calls these modules. Now, Puppet also has modules, but they do something entirely different because they are an organizational construct and are mostly equivalent to Ansible's roles. Now, in Puppet, role is also a thing in a common design pattern. It doesn't have a very sharp equivalent in Ansible, but it's kind of like host groups. Now, resource versus task is not such a pitfall, but it's good to keep in mind that this is the relation here. Okay, so how does it feel, though? What is it like with Puppet? So when you run your infrastructure on Puppet, you will mostly be writing manifest code and putting data in your Hira stores. Actually, these days you don't even write so much code, but still, let's look into it. The code itself, it depends on where you're coming from. Like, it's a C-like syntax, but you have these $signs on your variables, so might remind you of PHP. It might remind you of Perl. But the semantics of it is totally different from all of those. So yeah, keep that in mind. Yeah, at the end of the day, grabbing the syntax should be straightforward if you've done any scripting in the past. Now your data you just put into YAML. That's what we do these days, right? YAML ops. As said, you probably won't even write so much of your own code because there's modules for everything. You can download them from the Puppet Forge, like module for Node.js. As said, there's big stash of things you might need. There's this common design pattern I hinted at for rows and profiles. I won't go into this, but it's a pattern that helps you structure your things, and you don't have to wrap your head around the entire power of Puppet. You can be safe and roll with the standards. There's software you can put around Puppet, like the foreman, which will also handle your bare metal provisioning, for example, and helps you keep things under control. There's a tool called mcollective for orchestration things. I don't have a good diagram of how it works, so I just put this mythical unicorn. And yeah, it can do a lot of heavy lifting because Puppet itself is very light on orchestration, if not to say it's basically not possible. There are visualization tools like Puppet Board that are very lightweight and just use the data that Puppet provides anyway. And OK, this is where we take a little breath, because this was a little ride that I took you on. And we do the same thing for Ansible now. With Ansible, there's not so much of a language. Everything is YAML, for better or worse. And yeah, you will likely be writing your own roles and then have playbooks that orchestrate these roles, these component management units to the machines that you want to deploy things to. So this is what it can look like. Each little block here is a task with a name and some of what it does, like install a package using apt. Like it's very straightforward to read. It's nice and easy. And then the playbook for the actual orchestration might do so. So this is a super simplified example. The playbooks are a lot more powerful actually, but it could look something like this, right? You say, I have a group that I call the web group, and I apply some code to those machines, and after that, I apply code to the proxies. So you can, this way Ansible makes sure it has spoken to all the web servers, has done its job, and then once that is done, it can bring you online by initializing and starting the proxies, for example. So there's the Ansible Galaxy. It's the equivalent of the Puppet Forge. I don't know that it's so common to actually rely fully on this public code, because Ansible makes it so easy to create your own, and it will fit your needs better. Ansible's not so good at making these reusable units in open source. It's a little complicated. So again, variables will live in YAML. So with Ansible, everything's YAML, which it's nicely consistent in a way. And as said, the kind of cool thing is that you can also do it anywhere. Like, you don't even have to think, oof, yeah, my big Ansible server, and I have to make sure that it gets through all the firewalls, etc. No, maybe you just run Ansible in a different firewall zone as well. It's usually not much of a problem. The foreman also can do Ansible. There used to be this Ansible tower that you had to buy. I don't even know that you can buy it anymore, probably. But it's open source upstream. The AWX has become pretty good. So it makes a lot of sense to have this whole containerized environment, because, and I will get into that a little bit, or hint at that, Ansible is Python, much the way that Puppet is Ruby, and Puppet has started vendoring the entire Ruby so that they can be sure that it works in every environment. Ansible is not vendoring an entire Python, and if you know, you know. Like, managing Python stacks that have to coexist with others is interesting, just like with Ruby. Okay, so that were a lot of things that are similar between these tools, but now what's the differences? What do we have to keep in mind when we make a call of this problem we should tackle with Puppet, this other problem we should tackle with Ansible? Let's see it. So what is Puppet's general deal? Now, Puppet wants to model your entire infrastructure, basically. You build code that represents a state, the state in which you want all your things to be at all times, pretty much. And then Puppet just keeps running, and whenever some compute resource or whatever you are managing goes out of line, Puppet fixes it. So it's this very restrictive approach. So what does this look like? Imagine I have like a rack full of these servers. I have my Puppet, and like from the code and the configuration data and everything, Puppet has this internal model of what should the infrastructure be. And then the code that defines for every group of nodes, this is how you should look, and this is how you should look, right? It will be different for the, I don't know, the database versus the web application service or whatever. And Puppet just knows whom to tell what. And the way it works is the agent that is on every machine sends a request and the facts about itself, and then Puppet compiles this catalog of state, and will also update its internal Puppet database with facts and everything, and sends a so-called catalog with these resources that the agent then goes ahead and applies. And since this can affect a change on the master side, in the PuppetDB, for example, it may mean that a catalog changes, maybe even for other nodes, right? Something that is now different on the very front end might mean that now we have to change ACLs in the back end or whatever. And what you want is that all of this back and forth that could happen will eventually just converge. And Puppet stops making changes everywhere. And then you are in equilibrium, and Puppet can just maintain some sort of state. And then it's happy. Yeah. Running it in a different way is usually a little painful, but I'm always delighted to hear what strange things you do with your tools. With Ansible, it's more about distributed activity, is the way I think about it. So you think of it like scripting, like doing things to your machines. And since you can have these different playbooks that also have these different plays that talk to different host groups, it's I think of it a little like a view into, like you take a slice out of your model of your entire infrastructure, and then apply that slice, and then you care about the next slice. So in the little model, it may look like this. You have your Ansible machine. It has the inventory that basically is the idea of what your infrastructure is. And then you could run a simple playbook, let's say, that talks to one of your group and does some setup things. It has now some information. This is similar to the facts that Puppet also reports to the master. And then Ansible makes the machines run tasks to do what needs to be done, like installing some software or deploying your own. More complex playbooks may be like, okay, run setup tasks on each of these different host groups, and the internal representation is now more complete. Ansible has a better view of what's actually going on, and now the tasks that need running can rely on some knowledge of, oh yeah, okay, I have 3 database servers and 4 web application servers, whatever. And you can use this to configure whatever front end layer you have, or the backend, as said. Yeah, all these things. So summarizing. Yeah, you think of state that you want maintained, go to Puppet. But if you want things just in time and in an orchestrated fashion in a certain order, Ansible will make this much easier. I created a little metaphor to drive this home. So if you think of your little data center and claim to yourself it's kind of a theater stage, and your servers are the actors that want to give a certain aesthetic to the audience, then Puppet is this director in the corner who's very, very busy creating individualized scripts for every last actor, and then the actor just goes through their script. And I don't know how nice a play this is when you watch it, but it's what it is. Now, with Ansible, it's totally different. Like, Ansible says, OK, so now these 5 actors, please enter the stage, and then I will tell you exactly what to do at any time, and then you do it all in unison. And then you go off the stage, and some other actors enter, and then we do the same. So that'll be a totally different experience. And it also will probably not be Shakespeare. But that's not what we're here for. We need results, and we reach them with these tools, for example. I did another talk recently about non-configuration management things, if you can imagine. But I couldn't help myself but talk about it. And I said, yeah, I don't even know what the young people use for config management these days. So you tell me. But yeah, with those are basically the ways you can go about it. So yeah, this talk is pretty much angled at people who have their Puppet on them and maybe looking to adopt Ansible. But I guess it works either way if you just reverse the learnings. But yeah, I would just want to make sure that you don't try to use Ansible as a Puppet replacement and then apply the same knowledge you build around Puppet. That will be painful. So just a few things I would recommend. There's this pattern of having a site.yaml, which would be the big central code nexus, like the big playbook that runs all the other playbooks in some order through all your infrastructure. And I mean, it can be good to have it for reference, but running it is usually a pain. Because, yeah, it will take long as your code grows, and something always goes wrong, and it's not easy to recover from that. So, yeah, your mileage will vary. There's tagging in Ansible. Tags are very helpful, but can be hard to manage at scale when you have a lot of code. So I usually look to when I realize, okay, there are certain things that I don't know. In my long deployment run, it can always happen that I don't know, this old Hadoop cluster acts up. So then I have to stop and fix that. So it can be good to have a playbook to just do the critical path, and once that is all gonzo, you can go back to the thing you need. The cool thing with Ansible is you can also just, like in a minute, you can make a playbook that is just a copy-paste of some part of another playbook. It's, yeah, you're very flexible. We all like dry in our code. Don't repeat yourself. As I said, on the playbook level, this doesn't matter to me at all. Like, if I have very similar playbooks, like where one is basically a subset of another, don't care. It's just what it is. You just want to make sure that your roles, the actual working parts, that these are nicely compartmentalized. But yeah, that's that. And I haven't looked at these best practices in the Ansible documentation in a while, but I used to be careful about those. Not all of them I found super helpful. So think before you type. Yeah, just to go back to our little visualization, when you have this site.yaml, right? So when you have this big code for everything, what happens is, so you will talk to all your infrastructure, have the information, then run the code that handles your web application servers, and then your proxies, and then your, I don't know, and finally whatever runs on those. And this was such a boring thing for Ansible to do. You don't want this. You want to have actual orchestration, right? So yes, so you make sure SSH is in the right state everywhere, but then you care about the database, and then you do your web stack, and then you just deploy your web app, and then you can have some initialization that actually goes in whatever ways you need through your entire stack and does things. Then you wait for some internal thing to complete, and once Ansible sees, yeah, the service is up, then it can switch the, pull the switch, trigger the, I don't know. So it brings you online, right? At just right time. That's cool. So yeah, make Ansible be your orchestrator. Don't make it boring. Okay, so when should we Ansible rather than Puppet? And as said, you can just reverse those works. Deployments. Don't make Puppet your deployment tool. It's not good at that. Network infrastructure and things. Very straightforward with Ansible. Not a lot of work to do. With Puppet, I found it a little awkward. Yeah, when you are in a state where you often say things like, okay, I need to do this now. I have this thing automated. It needs to run now. Puppet can do this, but it's awkward. And actually, even if you do this with Puppet, Ansible not the worst tool to allow you to run Puppet just in time. Ansible can also do that, which is kind of cool. You have Python everywhere anyway. So, I mean, the Ruby nowadays you don't need. Puppet brings its own Ruby, but then you have Ruby. So, yeah, I don't know. So, as said, if you reverse it, you see what Puppet's good at. When there's a lot of OS level things going on and not so much deployment of code just right now. Puppet is good when you have a lot of different things, like not everything is Linux in the first place, or you have like 5 different flavors of Linux. Puppet just manages very naturally. With Ansible, you will be writing a lot more code to make this happen, and it makes Ansible less fun, honestly. Puppet is very powerful. That you can do all kinds of offline analysis of your infrastructure and what's going on. With Ansible, it's all very much more in time. So if you want to have views, you will have to run playbooks to get you your overviews in time. And yeah, there's not much data storage going on. So yeah, Puppet gives you a lot of things you can work with, but it's complex. I said that I should have removed this. That doesn't really make much sense. But yeah, if Python is not a thing in your infrastructure, and can you even run these days without Python? I don't think you can. So, oh yeah, also scale. Ansible, not great at scale. Apparently there are some techniques you can use to make it fast, but if you're looking at thousands of nodes, Puppet will be a lot more at home. Maybe both? I think so. I think these days there's not much of a hassle to deal with both, but also not having too many tools around is good. So yeah, if you can manage with one, that's good. Also, I don't even know if people still have discussions of is this better? Is this better? No, I think mine's better. I haven't been privy to that lately. But then I haven't been on many conferences in the last years. Weird. But anyway, what I would recommend whenever you have this kind of tooling discussion, just to be compassionate, be nice. We are all in the same boat, and all these tools are good, actually. Who knows? I'm done. Thank you all. I had fun. I hope you had too. And oh, by the way, the Unbelievable Machine Company is filling a lot of positions, not only like operating people like me. We also have, we do have cloud infrastructures and people who maintain them. We even have machine learning experts. It's funny that I railed so much on that in the beginning, but yeah, these people know actually how to use those correctly, I think. So yeah, I know you all have good jobs and are probably not looking, but maybe you know someone who is, or you know, keep us in mind. Maybe check us out. And yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Are there any questions? You all have configuration management, Puppet and Ansible in parallel. Yes? No? Okay, then thank you very much, Felix.